So folks, that is your ball game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have won with a final score of 20-10 as your final score. Let's talk about this. Let's review this game. Just going through the stats right now from the Buccaneers' perspective of it. First, Tom Brady. 18 of 34, 190 passing yards, 1 touchdown, only sacked once. It was not a fantastic, not a big, flashy game from Tom Brady. The Saints still have one of the best secondaries in the league. There is no doubt about that, but Brady did score a touchdown in clutch time when they needed him to. I will give Brady props for that. All in all, he could have had a much worse game. No turnovers on Brady's part besides the one confusing fumble where there was a timing issue with Hainsey and Brady. Besides that, all in all, Brady did a decent of enough job managing the game and getting the Bucs offense through this game. Leonard Fournette had a tough game. 24 carries for 65 rushing yards in this matchup. Fournette also had 2 catches for 9 yards on 4 targets. The Saints defense was very, very good against the run in this matchup. Quite frankly, the Saints defense was just good in general. So it was very tough sledding, both for passing and running the ball as well. Credit to the Saints defense for that. In terms of the receiving game, there wasn't much there. Mike Evans was the leading receiver in this game. 4 targets, 3 receptions for 61 yards before he was ejected at the start of the 4th quarter. For those of you who don't know, Marshawn Lattimore was getting into it a little bit with the Buccaneers sideline, then Tom Brady, then Leonard Fournette, before Mike Evans came over, decked Marshawn Lattimore. Him and Lattimore were getting into it. Marcus May joined the fray. Breshad Perriman joined the fray as well. Both Lattimore and Evans were ejected. The expectation is probably fines at least, maybe a suspension in there as well. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But Evans was still the leading receiver. He had a decently okay game, I feel like. Breshad Perriman, though, 45 receiving yards on 3 receptions and a touchdown on 5 targets. Breshad Perriman was one of those guys who stepped up in the absence of guys like Julio Jones and Chris Godwin. Very happy to have Breshad Perriman get a touchdown in this situation. Really helped change the momentum for this game, and it was a good thing to see. Scotty Miller had a tough game, 8 targets, 3 catches for 34 yards. I remember him having at least 2 drops in this game, so that was not a very good thing to see at all. But Scotty Miller, he's been a guy who was inactive last week, was inactive this week due to injuries. Other guys did step up like Perriman, and a little bit of Gage as well, 5 catches for 28 yards on 6 targets. Miller did have a couple of nice catches at certain points, but he also did have a couple of drops thrown in there as well. Also, Rachaad White had a drop. Ko Keith had a drop, which was not good. There were a handful of drops in this game from the offense, which was not a great thing to see overall. Defensively, though, is where things get really, really good. Devin White, 11 total tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Shaq Barrett, 5 total tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. Jotron Shawinka had half a sack. Vita Vea had half a sack. Antoine Winfield Jr. had a sack. Levante David had a sack. The Buccaneers pass rush was electric in this game. 6 total sacks on quarterback Jameis Winston on the day, and that's not even the best part about this defensive effort. Shaq Barrett forced a fumble that was unfortunately recovered by the New Orleans Saints, but still forced a fumble. You also had Logan Ryan forcing a fumble on Mark Ingram, the Saints running back, who actually had a pretty decent day overall, 10 carries for 60 yards. Didn't see him at all really in the second half of this game. Logan Ryan forced that fumble. It was recovered by Carl Nassib. It was deep in Buccaneers territory. That was a huge defensive play, arguably the biggest catalyst for the Buccaneers getting their win here. You also had Carlton Davis recovering a fumble on a catch from Chris Olave, who just quite frankly fell a victim to the turf monster and was able to recover a fumble. But the biggest thing here was the interceptions. Jamel Dean had an interception off of Jameis Winston in the end zone. He then had an interception very shortly after that as well. Then you had Mike Edwards with a 68-yard pick six off of Jameis Winston. Those 3 interceptions were some of the biggest turning points and really put a stamp on this game for the Bucs in terms of getting those interceptions. Ryan Succop made all of his kicks as well, 2 47-yard field goals, which is not an easy thing to make at all, and both of his extra points. Jake Camarda did have a pretty ugly 22-yard punt, but also did have 3 punts inside the 20. So all in all, where the offense may have floundered a little bit in this game and struggled mightily with ineffectiveness, the defense and special teams made up for it in a huge, huge way. 6 total sacks, 3 interceptions, and 2 fumbles recovered in this game by the Buccaneers defense. That is a hell of a game by this Buccaneers defense. In 2 games through the season so far, the Buccaneers defense has looked like a top 5 defense at the very least. Jameis Winston was 25 of 40 in this game, 236 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. So the secondary has been playing absolutely lights out through 2 games so far. You love to see that. And all in all, this was a very, very good game for the Buccaneers en route to a 2-0 start, which I'll say this, I thought the Buccaneers were going to lose this game, okay? And they finally proved that they can beat the Saints in the regular season. Shout out to my dad, by the way, who thought that it was time for the Buccaneers to get a win in this scenario. They did finally get this win. They, finally got that monkey off their back a little bit, and they were able to showcase that they can really get down and get a win. Fantastic stuff. I was very happy that I was wrong about this matchup, and the Buccaneers were able to get an incredibly hard fought, but very, very well earned win here. So very, very good stuff to see there.